gang, we're back, and yes, this week's gonna be just a little different with the continuation of our TV Tag Championship tournament.
However, Myron Schimmelman added a little twist to this tournament. Now, last week, we saw the first for winning teams eliminate the for teams that lost on Rage last week. And here's the kicker, this week, they'll have to hang onto those earned spots. Against for new teams.
It's a potentially cruel twist of fate for any team that won last week to be eliminated this week. But they've more than earned their spots if they can keep them this week.
And so, in the next hour, those for winning teams from last week will face new opponents and fight to avoid elimination.
Yes, it's a bit on the unusual side, but with so many teams interested in this tourney, it was the only way to fit them all in there for a fair shake.
Talk about fitting them all in there for a fair shake, man. Me and Steve have had a tough time sorting through all of these tag teams. But let's get the show on the road. This week, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, the Soul Patrol, trying to take away the spot of the Revival, Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder. Let's see if they can hang on to it or not.
Ladies and gentlemen, the following tag team tournament match is set for one fall with a 20-minute time limit. Introducing first, at a combined weight of 552 pounds from Washington, D.C., Soul Man Rocky Johnson, and from Roanoke, Virginia, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas, the Soul Patrol.
So hey guys, quick show of hands here. But who thinks Myron is actively trying to get the Revival eliminated from this tourney? Why else would he have chosen the Soul Patrol as their opponents?
Johnny, I'm shocked at that accusation.
And their opponents, representing Bell Unlimited, at a combined weight of 447 pounds, the team of Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder, the Revival.
Now, folks, we all know how much Myron Schimmelman despises Bell Unlimited, Scott Bell, and its many associates and peripherals. Now, if indeed Myron was to book Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson as their opponents, it is stacking the deck against them, but it's not eliminating them outright. They can still win. Ain't that right, Walt?
I guess you're right, that the Revival might win and retain their spot. But let's face the cold hard fact that Myron isn't making it easy for them.
And it'll be Tony Atlas starting against Dash Wilder.
Should be an interesting match. Let's see what develops. Walt Rothburn rings the bell. Here we go. Mr. USA rounds up Dash Wilder, catches an elbow to the back of the head. Dash Wilder with a drop toe hold on Tony Atlas, center ring. Atlas rounded up by Dash Wilder. A right hand and uppercut puts Atlas against the ropes. Atlas dropped to the canvas, rope-assisted stomp from Dash Wilder. Mr. USA finding himself in some trouble in the early goings here. A clothesline to the back of the head from Dash Wilder to Tony Atlas. Mr. USA counters, shoves away Dash Wilder, quickly gets back up on his feet. Gets countered again by Dash Wilder. Here's an arm drag from Tony Atlas. He's finally starting to kick it into a higher gear. Slam down goes Dash Wilder. There's a stomp to the midsection from Mr. USA. Tony Atlas drags Dash Wilder towards center, rounds him up but catches a jawjacker instead. Dash Wilder whips him to the corner. Tony Atlas counters, gets a hold of Dash Wilder, whips him into his team's corner, and here comes Rocky Johnson. And there's a double team off the top rope, assisted crossbody, as the Soul Man takes over for the Soul Patrol. Rocky Johnson catches a kick to the midsection from Dash Wilder. A drop kick that doesn't find the mark, a clubbing overhand right, left jab, a series of shots to Dash Wilder. Rocky Johnson slams Wilder's head into the turnbuckle and introduces him to his 9 cousins all at the same time. And down goes Dash Wilder. There's a stomp to the leg from Rocky Johnson. Rocky Johnson rounds him up. Dash Wilder quick with the counter, a kick to the leg of Rocky Johnson. Johnson whip to the Revivalist corner. Here comes Scott Dawson for the first time, and a double team incoming for Rocky Johnson. Whoa, well, here we go. Well, that was a pretty nice suplex combination as Scott Dawson takes over. Swing and a miss. Connects with a kick to Rocky Johnson. They lock up, they tussle. Johnson shoves him down to the mat. Rocky Johnson whips Scott Dawson to the corner. Dawson counters, finds his way out of danger. Gets a hold of Rocky Johnson. Whips him to the Revival's corner. Rocky Johnson escapes the corner and counter whips Scott Dawson into his team's corner. This is going to get monotonous, folks. Scott Dawson escapes the corner and counter whips Rocky Johnson into the Revival's corner. Well, something different changed. Here's a tag to Dash Wilder. Rocky Johnson taken down to the canvas. There's a kick to the knee from Dash Wilder as he takes over. Wilder countered by Tony Atlas with a shoulder tackle. Mr. USA rounds up Dash Wilder. Whips him to the Soul Patrol corner. He counters and escapes the corner and delivers the shoulder tackle to Tony Atlas. Rocky Johnson misses with his dropkick, catches a stomp to the back. And in quiet desperation, Dash Wilder engaging in a little chokey. He steps out. Here comes Scott Dawson on the tag, and Rocky Johnson does not look happy. Scott Dawson gets a hold of him, whips him towards the ropes. A collision with no result. Rocky Johnson whipped to the far right corner. Counters and escapes the corner. Delivers a dropkick to Scott Dawson that takes him down to the canvas. Drags him towards center. Here we go. USA Tony Atlas coming in on the tag. Rounds up Dawson. Dawson counters with a shoulder tackle. Takes Atlas down to the mat. Atlas quickly back up into a dragon sleeper for Scott Dawson. Dawson shoved away by Atlas. A set of quick jabs from Scott Dawson, but a hard right from Tony Atlas. Scott Dawson whips Atlas to the corner. Atlas counters with a boot to the face. Turns around. Scott Dawson rounds him up, has him up, slams him down with one arm towards center ring. Here we go again. Mr. USA escorts Scott Dawson to his team's corner. Head first into the turnbuckle we go, and here we go. Scott Dawson counters and escapes the corner and counter whips Tony Atlas to the Revival's corner. Dash Wilder adding a little something different with some dishonesty as Mr. USA gets choked out. A quick fireman's carry from Tony Atlas to Scott Dawson. Dawson counters with a jawjacker. Atlas counters with a headbutt. Mr. USA whips him towards the Soul Patrol's corner again. Dash Scott Dawson escapes and whips Tony Atlas to the Revival's corner. This is getting stale. Oh, man. Scott Dawson pretty determined to keep him in that corner. Here comes Dash Wilder on the tag. A snapmare from Scott Dawson and an assisted leg drop across the throat from Dash Wilder as he takes over for the Revival. Dawson countered by Tony Atlas with an uppercut. Mr. USA winds up the punch. There's a hard right that takes him down to the canvas. Dash Wilder counters with a shoulder tackle to Tony Atlas. Misses with the stomp. A standing dropkick from Mr. USA. And Tony Atlas talking trash to Dash Wilder. Wilder again counters with another shoulder tackle to Mr. USA as he steps out and tags in Scott Dawson. This team is on a sacred mission to hang on to their spot. And I'll tell you what, the Soul Patrol ain't making it easy for him. Atlas whipped to the corner, catches a cheap shot and a clothesline from the Revival. Scott Dawson rounds him back up. Hard whip over the top rope out onto the floor. Scott Dawson gonna go on out after him. Rounds up Mr. USA. Atlas counters with another headbutt. Dawson counters with a pretty hard left. Atlas counters with a pretty hard left. Misses with the right. A clothesline from Scott Dawson takes Atlas down to the floor. The referee continuing to count. Mr. USA catches a forearm from Scott Dawson. Dawson whips him back inside the ropes. Tony Atlas quickly back up on his feet before he can do anything. Scott Dawson catches a dropkick from Mr. USA. Followed up with a stomp to the leg. And he's desperate to tag somebody, anybody. He was in the wrong corner and reaching for a tag. Atlas drives the knee into the mat. Mr. USA rounds up Scott Dawson, whips him into the corner. He counters and escapes the corner again, and here we go again. Whipped into the opposing team's corner is Tony Atlas. Tony Atlas counters with a boot to the face. Scott Dawson counters with an elbow to the face and insists Tony Atlas remain, but Tony Atlas refuses to remain. Gets a hold on Scott Dawson, whips him to the Soul Patrol's corner again. And again, Scott Dawson escapes the corner and counter whips Tony Atlas to his team's corner. He is determined to make it stick. Tony Atlas says, no, we're not going to make it stick. Scott Dawson says, yes, we are. Oh, man, hard shot. Whipped Tony Atlas out of the corner and onto the mat. Scott Dawson with a kick to the midsection. He's got Atlas up, sit out powerbomb with a pin. 1, 2. Barely just a 2. Mr. USA powering out of that one. Scott Dawson rounds him up again. Tony Atlas with another headbutt to Scott Dawson. He's got to be sick and tired of those. Takes out Dash Wilder and whips Scott Dawson to his team's corner in the process. Here comes Soul Man Rocky Johnson. Here comes another double team. Scott Dawson bounced off the ropes into the waiting arms of Rocky Johnson. A one-arm slam center ring. Nice tandem teamwork from the Soul Patrol. Here's a cover. 1, 2. And that is going to do it. Atlas and Johnson have just eliminated the Revival, and I know Myron is happy somewhere.
The time was 8 minutes and 23 seconds. And your winners, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas.
Again, my brutal honesty may get me into a little bit of trouble here, but quite frankly, I would much rather see the Soul Patrol advance to this tournament than the Revival. Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder getting shown up by the Soul Patrol and subsequently eliminated. They are out of this tournament. Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas taking over their spot. Let's see what happens with the other 3 teams as we continue with this TV tag tournament. We'll be right back with a whole lot more right after the break.